Hi, and welcome to the Dev Leader podcast. My name is Nick Cosentino, and I'm a principal software engineering manager at Microsoft. In this video interview, I was joined by Anemari Fiser, who's a career coach that has experience as a software engineer, tech lead, and engineering manager. In our conversation, we got to focus on what it means to be a tech lead, what career growth looks like, and especially in terms of trying to navigate going from that senior software engineering position into a tech lead, as well as why soft skills are so important in your career development. Especially if you're someone that's thinking about going down this career path, I think that this is going to be an excellent interview for you to listen to. I think that Amory has tons of awesome insights here, and I think that you're really going to enjoy it. So sit back, have a listen, and let me know in the comments after your thoughts on this interview. Thanks, and I'll see you next time. To kick things off, would you like to give us a little bit of background for where you're at now and how you got to where you are in your career?
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite, Nick. Really happy to be here. A little bit about me and how I got where I am. I would like to start with the beginning.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I had what you would call like a straightforward path to software engineering. I was good at it, and I just got into it.
Okay,
Let's
yeah.
put it like that. And I got my degree in computer science. Started as an engineer, and at some point pretty early in my career, I moved into a leadership role, the tech lead role, which is a role that I very passionate about. After that, I took some other like leadership engineering roles, like engineering manager, product director. But my main focus for the past 4 years has been helping engineers grow in their tech careers by developing their soft skills. I do that through coaching, training, writing, and that's that's where I am today, and that's the main focus of my work.
That's awesome. So, given that you had what some might argue is like a more traditional kind of approach going to post-secondary education and stuff like that, like, did you know early on? Were you like, when you as you were growing up, were you like, that's where I'm going, or did it happen kind of like in high school, or like, when did you kind of know like that's the path I'm going on?
I think I knew pretty early on. Like I started learning informatics in like fifth grade, and I realized I like it and I'm pretty good at it.
Cool.
And my dad always had this perspective. He was saying that the only way to make it in life is if you know math.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so if you go, and only one goal that I had for my career, at least at that point, it was financial stability. Was a very important like aim for me. And so combining those two in Romania, where I'm from, at that point, it was like basically being in tech. So I
See.
just put in one and together, and I ended up in tech. I mean, it was like the straightforward way to go, giving that what I was good at, and giving my focus and to financial stability. So yeah,
That's cool.
it's pretty it's pretty straightforward right there.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I remember my father was kind of similar. I guess my mother and father were both like, "Hey, like math, like you better you seem to be good at it, like stick with that. Don't ever lose that." And I remember being like, "I don't like math. Like I don't want to do math." And yeah, kind of interesting, kind of similar in that regard. And I think too on the financial stability part, I find like some people maybe kind of go to extremes on this, where some people are like, it's only financial, like what's the highest paying job I can possibly have. And then on the other side, I find that some people are almost like they steer away from, like, it's like wrong to talk about the financial part, like that's like, morals and values, like that shouldn't be the focus. But I mean, it sounds like for you, you were saying like, that actually, like, having something that is going to be financially stable is a very big component for a career.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a differentiation between stability and aim for high pay jobs, right?
Right.
I mean, stability, it's making sure you're in a market where you're going to have work to do. Like that was kind of my level. If you keep working, you're going to grow, you're going to have
Right.
opportunities. There is, at least from my perspective at that point, there is no blocker, there is no stopper. It's just you, through hard work, you're gonna grow,
Right.
which I think is very different than having that clear aim of always going for
What's the
the
bigger
high
number?
page. Exactly. Actually, in my career, I always prioritize learning over gain, and I was always going for the roles that challenge me, that gave
Hmm.
me new opportunities. I think that's also something that helped me grow as I was growing to like different leadership roles and learning different things, this allowed me to get exposed to a lot of different things
Right.
without worrying. Right, again, I had the stabilities. I didn't have to worry about money, but I didn't chase it at the next level. I
Yeah.
think it's all about the goal and what is it important for you, and there's different strategies and paths for both. That doesn't make one or the other better.
Before we continue on, this is just a quick reminder that I do have courses available on DomeTrain. If you're just getting started in your programming journey and you want to learn C Sharp, you can head over to DomeTrain. I have a Getting Started in C Sharp course. It's approximately 5 hours of content taking you from absolutely no experience to being able to program in C Sharp. And after that, I have my Deep Dive course, which will take you to the next level with another 6 hours of content so that you can start building basic applications. Head over to DomeTrain and check it out. Yeah, and I like that a lot because the reason I framed it like that is that if I pick two extremes like that, kind of a general philosophy I have is that when we take extremes like that, there's probably somewhere, not necessarily directly in the middle, but some place in between those that is a little bit more sustainable, a little bit more realistic. And I really like that you were talking about stability. Like it's not maximize the number, but if the goal is stability, that might mean that the pay in terms of your compensation isn't the absolute maximum, but say it's reasonable, it's good, you're happy with it, and given how you're approaching your job, you're also able to navigate and find other opportunities as they come up. You're mentioning prioritizing growth, which means that if you are continuing to get better, challenging yourself, then more doors kind of open up along the way, which again, from a sustainability perspective, just gives you more opportunities. So that's really cool.
Exactly.
Cool. So tech lead, let's maybe for folks that are going to be listening and watching to this, when we talk about someone who is, say, a junior developer, they move into senior, and then we have we have team lead, we have tech lead, maybe you have different perspectives on what those mean. Would you be able to maybe share some perspective on those titles from your experience and how they might differentiate from someone who is a mid-level or senior engineer so people can kind of get some understanding for the framing?
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you my take on it, but I
Sure.
can tell you it's definitely like people have, exactly as you said, different expectations and different definitions
Right.
for a tech lead, a team lead. I think that only makes this role even more complex and more complicated to tackle. So based on my experience, and this is not just my personal experience on being a tech lead, but also I've been training, I think, over 300 tech leads by today in the past years, and giving that what I've seen,
Mm.
them being from different contexts, from different companies, from different cultures. I came up with this kind of definition that I think it captures all different opinions, which is the tech lead. It's a software engineer that leads a technical team and it's accountable for the deliverables of that team. And so I think that kind of sums up all of the different areas of misconceptions or like definitions. It sometimes it overlaps with the team lead role. Sometimes it's only one role doing both.
Right.
I think what people often the reason why people often separate the team lead and the tech lead is because they think about the tech lead just as someone that is just taking part of the technical side, someone
Sure.
very knowledgeable on the technical side, and that it's guiding and helping the team grow in the technical area. And they think about the team lead more on the people side, like that it's helping people grow, develop, helps them build a growth plan,
Mhm.
dealing with performance, dealing with performance reviews, like all of these different things. In my experience, it's really hard to have them separate, right? So
Mm.
every time I very rarely seen teams where you have both of these roles, I have to say that. But even when I've seen it, it takes a lot of work to make those boundaries clear, because there's a lot of overlapping. And I also think as a tech lead, even if you're only focusing on the tech side, you still have to worry and care about all the other like people side. And I think you're still accountable for it, and it still impacts you, even if it says so in your job description or not. And so I think this is my take again.
Right.
But this is what I got to realize, and what I've seen it works best in my experience.
Okay, no, that makes sense, and I think, yeah, I can definitely appreciate the the team lead versus tech lead, the overlap, as you mentioned, having them coexist. It's not that it's impossible, but when we talk about the roles and responsibilities, um, there could be some challenges and like delineating like who is going to be responsible over what, right? Um, when we have roles like this, what's I don't know a good way to necessarily say this, but it's almost like if there isn't a clear responsibility for one person to own, that it can make it kind of difficult that if you have overlap, it's like, well, who is ultimately supposed to be responsible? And again, it's not that it cannot work. It's just that you need to be very clear about ultimately who does have that accountability and responsibility.
Yeah, and these two people need to work very well together. They need to align from the beginning on what those expectations are and how they're gonna work together, so they don't step on each other's toes, and to actually be productive
Right.
together. And that requires constant and continuous communication and trust between the two with their team, clarity. So yeah, I think it's just that it makes things definitely makes things doable, and they can be done. It requires way more engagement in this
Sure.
process, let's say, from both sides.
Yeah, and you can imagine that someone who is another IC on the team, right? So they're working with let's take the scenario where there's an IC and a team lead and a tech lead. If they're getting conflicting viewpoints from those individuals, now you have an IC that's like, I actually don't know what direction I'm supposed to move in on whatever they're being tasked with or whatever the challenge is in front of them, because they literally have conflicting sort of perspective from two individuals. And they're like, someone's going to be unhappy about whatever I do going forward. So yeah, that alignment is critical.
I mean, that alignment and those problems can also appear also when there is no team lead, like it's just the tech lead and other stakeholders like
Sure.
engineering managers or product managers. Or if there is no alignment between the leadership team, the team would still have the same challenges and try to figure out, okay, who do I follow, who's right. Like the leadership should make sure they are aligned before they communicate anything to the team, in order to actually have the team efficient, instead of going back and forward and, like exactly you said, worrying about, okay, who do I listen to. They should be focusing on exactly what it is needs to be worked on.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that too, because for myself as an engineering manager, I have a couple of like, we call them feature crews that are like smaller sub teams within the team that reports to me. So within some of the feature crews, we'll have like a tech lead. And
Mhm.
so we don't have a team lead. We have myself as the engineering manager, and some feature crews have a tech lead. And that dynamic that you just mentioned, if I had tech leads that were not aligned or on the same page as me, then we could absolutely arrive at these situations where an IC is like, someone's telling me this, you're telling me that. So I need to make sure that when I'm working with my tech leads, like I try to give them sort of constraints to work within. Like, hey, if there's day-to-day stuff coming up, like there's a bug that comes up that's high priority and it's pretty clear that like you know how to prioritize that to get it fixed, or a smaller task that fits into a feature, like please feel free to delegate, like you have some room there. But when it comes to like next steps in the planning or the bigger scope of work, like we probably need to sit down and get on the same page. And that way it's not like what direction are we heading in, and people have weird pull into different perspectives there. But some of the day-to-day stuff, like they have a little bit more sort of delegation power in that sense. That's seemed to be a decent balance from what I've operated with. But any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it really depends on the context and what you shared. The only way to really know it's if you see it's working. And I think that's where I would start, right? So I think it's important to you start from a structure that you think it can work, that you've seen
Mhm.
work in this context before, and you kind of develop from there. I think it's very important to constantly verify that it works, not just
Right.
for you, because it's like your gut feeling, but also for them. And that doesn't just mean, hey, does this work for you? It means that like you create like this continuous feedback loops where you can get information in different, maybe even creating different ways to gather that input, that it doesn't come with pressure or like in a one-on-one. Like I think that's the only way to really know if the process is working. It's if it all the parties involved are happy with it, or at least you're seeing results. And for that, you need continuous input from the people around you, stakeholders and teams, and not just your gut feeling. Unfortunately, our gut feeling, the more people are involved, it can trick us.
Right.
So at least to have that validation. But coming back to your point, I mean, for me, sounds pretty straightforward. It's really hard, I think, to as an engineering manager to keep that balance between like not overwhelming the tech leads, but at the same
Hmm.
time supporting them, right? Like in regards to how much information you share, how early. In my experience working with so many tech leads, I think the more they know, the better. At any point, like that doesn't mean just tech leads; it just means the whole team. The more people are involved, the more they know what's coming. I think it just helps them to not fear, to not be like worried or feel overwhelmed or not knowing what's going to happen. But it's important that they are at the same time you combine that with alignment and clarity on what is it, as a timeline based, what is it that we're focusing on. So we're thinking about this, but for the next 3 months this is what we're working on. And that's where the tech lead, the leadership comes in to kind of provide that clarity so the team can focus.
Yeah, I love that because I've had conversations before around like transparency in general, right? Like I don't think in my entire career I've never had to like try and hide things from people. That would feel like I feel like I would be very bad at that and like I wouldn't even know what to do. So um I've always tried to lean into transparency, and then the sort of the challenge with that ends up being like at, at what point is it being helpful and being transparent versus that overwhelming like here's just like every bit of information flowing through. Like there's some things that like I wouldn't tell people, not because I'm trying to hide it. It's almost just like I don't want to overwhelm, and that way there's and I don't know the right way that I measure this or the consistency around it, but there's situations where it's like I omit things, and then if someone's like, hey, what about X, and I go, hey, great that you brought it up, and then I can share more about it. But at some point I have to like just not share everything, especially if I have multiple feature crews and some of that, the some of the technical things we're doing don't seem as relevant. So yeah, I really like that idea of like, being transparent but not overwhelming.
I think in regards to what you just said, what's very important to keep in mind, and something that I work with constantly with tech leaders, is that it's important for you to know what your style is.
Mm.
If you have a tendency to, because people usually like go into the extreme, if you have a tendency to overshare, then you have to keep consistently for yourself in check with the feedback,
Hmm.
with seeing people reactions, with reflecting on how the conversation went, what impact did it had, sharing that information so you can adjust. If you are on the other extreme, which a lot of like micromanagers are, or people that are struggling really hard with control and trust, where they basically hold back on everything because they are afraid on how people are going to react, then that's the space where you need to explore a little bit the middle, which is you start sharing, you see how people react, you kind of getting some trust. So
Mm.
that's where I would start to kind of learning that adjustment, because yes, the answer, it's always in the middle. So it's important to understand where you start,
Hmm.
and start exploring basically.
Interesting. Yeah, and I like that what you said earlier, this idea of if you're getting continuous feedback, right? Like you're trying to constantly measure, trying to evaluate. The nice thing is like when you start, it might not be right. And that's okay, right? Like you're going to try something, you might say maybe it was an improvement, maybe it was a step back. Whatever you just tried is a step back, and at least you're going, okay, now we're measuring whatever that looks like. Maybe even around your measurement and how you're observing things, maybe that needs to be improved. But if you're constantly looking at ways to improve by measuring, then I feel like ultimately that's going to converge on things getting better.
Well, I like to think that any step forward, it's a step forward. So I don't really think you can. We always say like we did a step back. Well,
Okay.
actually, even by running through something that it didn't really turn out the way you expected, it's also a step forward, showing you that that doesn't work.
Yeah,
So
you
then you
learn
can move
something
on to
about
the
it.
next strategy, right? So, and I'm saying this because a lot of the people that I work with in coaching, they are stuck at this point. Maybe if what
Mm,
if I do this? What if I do that? Where the problem is, while you're stuck there, you're not actually doing anything, and you still have the problem, right?
right.
So it's about encouraging people to just start somewhere. If there's no red flags, nothing that you can come up with that would be a really big problem for them to take that strategy, just start somewhere, but it's very important to be accompanied by the process of reflection. So that's where I think actually growth happens the fastest, when you don't just do things and in 6 months you look at, I think it turned out well. But if you really want to improve a process or a skill, you continuously reflect, okay, this action or behavior that I changed, did it have the impact that I was expected or not? So the more you reflect, the faster you can incorporate it as a good or a bad strategy in your current context and adapt. So yeah, but at least for me, this is how I see it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's like, and I can appreciate that. It's like you said it in your explanation, but the change that you incorporate may not have had the outcome that you were expecting, but it's still something. It's still something you could learn from, and having that bias for action coupled with we're going to reflect is at least like it's moving things, right? And I think there's a lot of power in that, because probably many of us have seen time and time again where it's like we're in a situation that we're not super excited about. There's something that we can improve, there's a challenge, whatever it happens to be, and we can sit there going like, well, we don't know the perfect solution for it, we don't know this, we don't know that. And instead, if we try something try something and go measure it, and then that way you can say, okay, like we learned something about it, maybe it's not the perfect thing, either we keep going in this direction because we think we're on the right path, or we try something else and at least keep trying to take steps forward. So I think that's really powerful.
I mean, if you're not trying anything, you still have the problem. It's just that you're not doing anything about it, right?
Yeah.
I say this because every time I tell this to people, like we do the whole process, and every time we get to the same thing, and they're like, okay, yeah, but if you don't want to do anything and you're not comfortable getting out of that comfort zone, then you're stuck here. That's why we started this whole conversation. Usually that's what it comes to. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to go try with these things. It's important to understand where people are. So this is why I'm very mindful of not giving people advice, or at least in the coaching session, because it's very important for people to be responsible and for them to decide what they're willing to try at the point where they are. Because when you're giving advice, you're giving advice based on your experience and where you are at that point, but that might not work for where people are. So it's about constantly validating, also as a leader, working with tech leads, working with people in your team, to validate that whatever it is that they're trying, it's in their comfort zone and they're willing, like it's their step forward,
Yeah.
And I find that a little bit sometimes hard, mostly as leaders, because you want people to speed up, you know where they have to get, but the only way to actually see progress is to meet them where they are and let them do their own steps. So that's a key part of it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, because I've talked about this a lot too. Even you can scale this to different levels, right? If we scale it down to even like say someone who's more junior helping someone else that's junior, or mid-level helping junior, right? You might be in a situation where you have the very junior person going to the person slightly more experienced, saying, I need help with this. And that slightly more experienced person goes, okay, here's the answer to it, right? Here you go. And then if you keep doing that, it feels like you are helping that more junior person because they're getting their stuff done, right? Like both parties feel pretty good about it. The more junior person saying, hey, great, I'm unstuck. The more slightly more senior person is going, great, I've helped. But then if you keep doing this, what ends up happening is that it perpetuates this sort of reliance, right? Where over time, that more junior person's going, I'm getting the answers. And the slightly more experienced person's going, wait a second, why am I stuck constantly giving the answers? And if we scale this, it's kind of like you don't want to be in a leadership position where you're just telling everyone exactly what to do. Like that's not helping them grow. That's not getting diverse perspectives. Like it might seem like in the moment you're like, okay, I have a solution. And I think a lot of us with engineering mindsets are like, there's a problem. Okay, like I want to come up with the solution. I want to solve this. But we have to practice holding back and being like, how do I guide someone through coming up with some solution, something that they want to try implementing so that it is their idea, they can try it out. I like that you said that it's like you're meeting them where they're comfortable to go try something. But I think ultimately that's going to be the thing that like they can have some ownership on. If I tell someone, go do it this way, they're going to be like, well, that's what Nick said. So like, I'm doing it for Nick, not like I'm doing it because this is the thing that I'm going to drive.
Exactly. And as a leader, you don't want to have that on your shoulders. So I think coaching them through the process to, and I said, even if you are going to give them an idea or a suggestion, or it's very important to always say, look, my take, or somehow how you can run it, but always make sure that you align with them, that they take the final like say on, okay, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna see how it works, I'm gonna run with it, I'm gonna evaluate, the reflect on the process. At the end of the day, they are the ones doing it. I think that the problem comes in regards to what you said, to the short term versus long term
Mhm.
game, right? Because the micromanagement, I tell you what to do, is the short term game. I get my problem fixed. The problem is, as we all know, and that's why we're so focusing on these other ways of growing and supporting people, is that we know in the long term it doesn't work. It's not scalable. And that's where the business side comes in. It's just not scalable. You're one person, and at some point, it's gonna be impossible for you to manage everything, and your team is gonna be stuck, and they're gonna depend on you. So the mess just keeps scaling.
Right.
Let's put it like that. So I think that's when people start exploring the other strategies, because once you see the pain, you want things differently. It just takes a little bit more time.
Yeah, and it's truly is because it's like short versus long term, right? If you're in a position where you're like, this feels uncomfortable because we're dealing with challenges or problems, there's live site issues, it could be anything, right? If we just give the solution, the problem goes away. It's fast. It's like, that's okay, we're unblocked, let's keep going. But yeah, when you start to realize over time that that's not scaling, then it almost becomes pretty obvious, like, that's not the solution. Like there has to be something better. And I think that a lot of the time, giving people autonomy and ownership over solving those things, and like you as leaders, like you kind of guide people, push them in a direction to let them know, like, hey, you can have decision making power over this. You can take something and own it. I'll be there to support you. Creating environments where it's like safe to fail. I know some people don't like the F word, but yeah, like just creating that environment where people are like, okay, I know that given like what my leadership is saying, what my manager is saying, that I am empowered to go try this, right? I am empowered to take some responsibility on this. And, because they trust me, if it's not perfect or doesn't work out exactly as expected, no one's going to come chase me down and like yell at me. It's like, we'll reflect on it. My leadership has demonstrated they do this same thing if they make mistakes or things don't work out well. So I think, yeah, creating environments like that is like another contributing factor to the success of that.
But it's the base of everything, right? I think we're talking here about psychological safety and having the
Exactly.
the the like the perfect, or at least the setup environment for people to collaborate, work together, and grow, which is like you describe. It's hard to get to, but it only gets built through to building that trust and continuously creating that safe space for people. That means embracing failure and making it part of your day-to-day process, like removing blame and
Hmm.
helping people see that, like supporting them even when things go wrong. I actually think that's when how leaders build character, like, and how they prove their character. It's when things go wrong, because when things go well, everybody can be happy and
It's
share.
easy.
Exactly, but when things actually, and they have other stakeholders in your back screaming at you, or and you have to protect the team, and that's where things become a little bit tricky. So I think that's where you have to hold your ground and actually stand up for what you're preaching.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's awesome. I wanted to ask. I know we probably want to talk about some career development, and I was curious from and you might have a different take on this or how you want to maybe navigate it, but going from something like I would imagine someone like a senior software developer is sort of on track to, if they're based on their interest, their skill, and obviously this is going to depend where they're working to, but they're probably the best set up to go into something that's like a tech lead position. And I realize too that sometimes something like a tech lead is not like a formal role, or like you're not necessarily always like promoted into the tech lead role, like where your title changes and at your company. But I was curious, like someone who is a senior software developer and they are interested in kind of going down this path into to being a tech lead, like could you talk about what that might look like, the things they should be focused on, or how they approach, like, how do I take that step?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I work with on with people, it's doing this transition
Mm.
from like individual contributor, from senior developer to tech lead. So I can definitely tell you a couple of things about that. So the first thing I think it's important, the moment when you have clarity that you want to go in that direction, is important to understand why. You are doing it for. Is it because, I mean, and people do, like you mentioned before, is it because the salary raise? Is it
Hmm.
because the title? Is it because you want to grow and help people, which is mostly the answer 99% of the people go? Is it because you think you can do a better job than your current tech lead? And you just, you want to put yourself out there. So it's very important for you to discover your why and be honest on what that why is. The reason that I'm saying this is because sometimes there might be different ways for you to meet that goal, which doesn't necessarily requires you to put in a position which you might not necessarily want to do. So
Right.
getting your why behind the decision, it's first thing. Second, when you have clarity, whatever it's the reasoning, it's about starting to work in that direction. The way to do it, you get clarity on what are the things, the skills that I need to develop in order to get there.
Okay.
A simplest way to do this is to just take the job description for the tech lead role in your current company, the simplest way, and go through the expectations and start assessing yourself. What am I doing? What am I not? Why? What is it missing? Build a growth plan.
And
Okay, this is what.
doing it honestly, right? Because I think sometimes people could be like, I could do that. I could that one too, sure. But it's like, if that's what your job is every day, do you genuinely feel that, or are you just trying to, make yourself feel better?
I hear you, but I also think, I mean, that's at least a starting point. What I'm
Sure. Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that a lot of times you don't even know you're not as good, or you don't want to do the things until you do the things.
Right.
So at least with the motivation of, yeah, I can do this, it's something you can work with than
Hmm.
people that really struggles to position themselves in that position. And I really believe they hold themselves back because,
Would
it takes a leap. Sorry.
Would you recommend that when people go through that exercise that they evaluate themselves, like where their strengths are, and then sort of the areas where they're like, that one I might need to go like spend some more time on skilling up on that or getting some of the experience so that they understand like where their energy has to go?
So, I mean, my process, it's like a scaling system.
Okay.
I like going through each individual expectation and scaling yourself from 1 to 10. It's not
Okay.
about the number, it's about understanding, okay, if you're a 5, why you're a 5, and then understanding what is it missing for you to be
Mm.
a 10. And it's just a way to kind of build that, helping you focus in the area of what is it that I have, what proves that I'm good in this area, and what is it that I'm missing. So it brings the right mindset for that growth. So that's how you find out things that you need to work on. And now comes the
Mm.
very key part in regards to what you said. How do you know you want to do this? How do you know you're focusing on the right thing? You validate that with people around. Very
Okay.
important, your manager. If you want to grow into a tech lead role, and I mean that's in some company it's not a promotion, but in most company it is. You have to validate that with the person that is gonna say yes or no, is gonna advocate for you going in that position. So next part is you going with this assessment to your manager and asking them to do the same assessment for you. Then putting this together, seeing the overlap, seeing the gaps or what you might have missed, and
Hmm.
align with them on what it means, right? So that's how you know you're going in the right direction. Because very often, as you see, there's so many misunderstandings when it comes to the tech lead role, that you also have your own assumptions based on other tech leads you've seen, based on whatever you read. At the end of the day, the source of truth is whatever you agree with your manager that you need to work on, right?
Right.
You can have a conversation about, I don't agree with these expectations, whatever. That's open to have it there, right? But it comes back to having that clarity on what is it that I need to work on. And very important, how will I know that I get there? Because a lot of job descriptions these days, they are very have an impact at the company level. What does that mean? And
Right.
so that's on you to actually define what do you think that means, and going to your manager and say, look, I want to do this workshop, this whatever, this presentation. Will this help me grow in this area? Will this check the box? But it's this continuous process of validation and checking that you're on the right track.
Mhm.
And I'm saying this because a lot of people just do things and they assume they are doing the right things. And in 6 months, their manager like, nah, Well, we don't expect that from you. That's not what we consider impact at the company level, and people are disappointed, and you have to go back to the board. And so these are the for growing in any role you want to grow, this is usually the process that I take with people. But it's constantly checking and verifying progress and reflecting until you get to the point. At least it gives you a space where you can challenge people, and say, look, okay, you say I'm not there yet. Because a lot of time you get this, I feel like you're not there yet. What does that mean?
Yeah.
If you cannot justify it, you have
Yeah.
to have resources to challenge people on, okay, what is it that I'm missing? Give me an example where you think my communication wasn't up to the standards. I
Right.
want to know, I want to improve. So you have to help people help you, basically.
And I can really appreciate that too, because like as a manager, and I've seen other managers, not necessarily my own, or historically even for my own managers, when you're in this spot of like, it's easy to say like, oh, just keep doing what you're doing, or it's easy to say like, oh, not yet. But like, why? What's the justification? What's the rationale? I, the way that you talked about kind of doing the self analysis and then bringing that to your manager to do the same thing is like almost word for word exactly what I do with my employees. You're talking about going from senior to tech lead, let's say, and going through the job description. But literally the only difference with what you described versus what I do with my employees is we have like a talent guide or a rubric, for lack of a better word, and it talks about the levels that people are at, the skill sets, the expectations. And I literally say we do this a couple of times a year at a minimum, and I'll say go through it. Like we've had this conversation before, but you go through it, kind of, rate yourself, come up with examples of these things, either for where you feel like you might be lacking, or things where you're like, this project or this interaction, whatever it happens to be, like kind of backs up this example. Go through that, write your notes, and then I will do the same thing. We come together and we talk about it. And I always remind them, like, my goal with that conversation is not to be like, and look, and that's why my side is the right side, and you just wasted your time doing this. It's really just about level setting the expectations. I remind people that I would love to have full visibility into absolutely everything that everyone's doing. There's always going to be stuff I miss, so that's why it's really important that they have some of their perspective coming in. Or this idea of someone saying, hey, I worked on this project, doesn't that demonstrate this thing here? And when we can have that conversation of like, actually no, or actually that actually ties into this other skill set, and just having that alignment where we can say, now we're on the same page. If we leave that conversation, we should have things that you need to work on still. Or there's times where I'm like, and we feel like together, like you're checking all the boxes for the next level. So, without me promising anyone a promotion, it's like, you should feel pretty good that you're on the right track for promotion cycle, that this would be coming up. Ultimately, just trying to remove surprises, because like you said, the worst thing is when you don't have these interactions, you meet up in 6 months or 12 months feeling like I've been doing all the right things, just to have this terrible surprise of like, no, that's not it at all.
And so many people do. Even today, like it's just it happens. Like everybody seems to know the theory, but I mean, it's not easy to apply it. It takes a lot of work, intentional work. I always tell people like growth comes with intentional work. And intentional means you do the preparation, you do the assessment, you do the reflection, you do the check-in, you show up for the one-on-ones with your manager, which I never understand when people say, I have nothing to talk about with my manager in my one-on-ones. And I'm like, what about your growth? What about feedback? What about what you want? What about what you're struggling with? That's why they there for, right? To support you. And yeah, so it's just that hopefully through this, and to keep saying it out loud and coming from different perspective and different people are gonna finally incorporate it and use it in to speed up their growth and development.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I even like, I kind of struggle, and maybe this is more, maybe it's more common at startups. I've worked at startups, and one-on-ones not being a consistent thing. Like I can get that to some degree depending on the life cycle of the startup. If you're just like, look, like we're just literally trying to survive, and if we have to miss a one-on-one, sorry, but like, but at some point when things start to scale, like that stuff's got to be pretty consistent. And making sure that at least there's a feedback loop, right? Maybe your one-on-one day shifts or something, but at least having some type of consistent feedback loop. But yeah, like I always tell people if you're not having one-on-ones, like step one is like have the conversation to talk to your manager, like what can we do to get something consistent. If you can't do every week because that's too much or something, and can we do every 2 weeks? If you can't even do every 2 weeks, like what's the thing that we can commit to get that in place. Get something right now. You have something in place. Take advantage of that, right? If you're, I say too, like if you're doing a status update, I know people will say like no status updates on one-on-ones. I'm like, I don't think it's the best use of time, but like if that's what your jump off point is, I'm like, I'm okay with it. But I always remind people if that's the only thing you're talking about, I will start interjecting and saying, okay, like maybe we should be talking about these other things. So in your next one-on-one, let's make sure we can have time for career growth or more dedicated feedback and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think like the career growth stuff, it's I've been pretty fortunate that I have a lot of people that do want to talk about that. So that's nice that people seem to be pretty like self-motivated to bring it up. But yeah, I know that I've talked to a lot of people that are like, I just don't know what to talk about in a one-on-one. It's like
Well, I have a whole chapter in my upcoming book in for tech leads about this, just coming up with topics on 101. So hopefully no one
awesome.
will run out of it.
And when is the book planned? Oh, and maybe do you have a release date planned?
Yeah, end of the year.
Awesome. That's super exciting. So yeah, I mean, but like if you're writing a whole chapter on it, then like yes, it's definitely an important thing.
I mean, it's like you said. I think it's one of the first things. I'm focusing on tech leads in my book, but I think
Hmm.
it's one of the first thing as a leader you need to do. Setting up those one-on-ones it's about building trust. It's about building a consistent channel of communication with your team members. Whatever you decide to do later, if it's feedback, if it's update, if it's questions, if it's complaining, if it's talking about your kids and dogs, whatever it is, it's an opportunity for you to build trust.
Yeah.
What very often happens, like you said, and I work with startups also, and or people, even if not in startups, that are not doing the one-on-ones consistently, leaders, is that they very often they tell me, oh, yeah, I will just do on one-on-one when I feel like it or when we need it. The problem is that when you
When we
need it,
need
it's
it, yeah.
already too late.
Yeah.
And that's the like people would know when you schedule that one-on-one that we have something to talk about. So
Yeah.
it's a problem already, right? And it's already escalating. You already have to deal with it.
Yeah.
When you have them consistently, you can identify if it's a risk before it becomes big. You can see the red flags, you can hear the complaints, you can kind of jump in earlier. So it gives you an opportunity and the other person to not get to a big thing, let's say. I really think it helps a lot with avoiding big thing escalating or conflict, that it doesn't necessarily have to get there.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, right? Because if your one-on-ones are always leveraged that way, it's almost like that every time you have one, it's going to be something that's
It's going to
probably
be bad.
uncomfortable. And like when I do one-on-ones with people, or like if I'm joining a new team, whatever it happens to be, I remind people like if we're doing weekly one-on-ones, if we finish our one-on-one, and as soon as we're finished, if you're like, oh yeah, I had this really important thing for Nick, or it's the next day and you're like, I'm stuck on something, I need to talk about something. I'm like, please don't wait for the next week's one-on-one. Just message me, just like, open door policy kind of thing. Because what I don't want to have happen is that people wait for their one-on-one to pile on problems. Like, if that's the spot where they feel comfortable, that's totally fine. But I just want to make sure that they feel as comfortable as possible at any point to say, I need to talk about this.
But that's the next level. That's on top of the one-on-ones. What most
Exactly.
tech leads or tech leaders do that are not doing the one-on-ones is they say, well, they just do that. My door, it's always open. I just tell them to show up to me and tell me. Well, that doesn't just happen. You have to build the trust. So if you
Yeah.
have the one-on-ones, at least that's a starting point for people to, oh, I have this one-on-one, I can prepare to bring you the topics.
Yep.
It's way harder. You create an opportunity. If you have that trust already, I actually think it might be easier for you to maybe somehow reduce the frequency, or as you already have built that trust and people know that they can reach out to you and you already have that constant communication. But if you're from the beginning, yeah, I'm an open book, ask me anything, that never happens. When did this work? And people still use it.
Yeah, it's such a good point. When I joined, so I switched teams just over a year ago now, and from the first day, kind of telling people the same idea. Hey, doors always open, but we're having one-on-ones every week, and I don't know how long it took. Months. It must have been months, but like getting to the point where I have to earn the trust and the respect of the people on the team. I can't show up and expect it or command it. You have to put in the time and the effort and make sure that people understand, like, that you're working at this to be able to support them. And then after doing it, now I will have people that will regularly, outside of one-on-one, say, hey, like, it could be a family thing. It could be interpersonal conflict at work, anything. And they will approach me outside of one-on-ones. And for me, it's a nice sign. Like, obviously I don't like when people have challenges. No one wants problems, but it's a nice sign that they trust me, that they can come to me and they're not like, okay, crap, like I'm just gonna wait to the one-on-one because I feel like I'm forced into, like, this conversation. It's like, no, Nick said that he's gonna be there and he has proven it, so I can lean into that. So that is a nice sign.
Perfect example to my point. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so on career progression, and maybe transitioning to soft skills, because I was curious, like and I don't know if you have the same perspective on this or not, but I have felt like maybe for more junior developers, that kind of getting started in software development, I don't want to say that you don't need soft skills. I think that you always do, but I feel like maybe the opportunity to lean into your soft skills seems like it comes up less. And I feel like I see people really hyper focused on their technical stuff and just being able to prove their technical excellence. And then as they're getting promoted, it's almost like if they neglect the soft skills, they start to reach like a ceiling almost, where they're like, why am I stuck here? And often, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but I often find that people are like, they haven't invested into soft skills. And I was curious if you have like a similar observation, or in general how you see soft skills kind of tying into software engineering.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like whatever we're building as software engineers, we want it to have impact, and that means actually having an impact on the people around us, on our users, on whatever, on the people we work with, and that means being able, like, having soft skills to get there. The reason that I'm saying this, I think it's soft skills are required at any level, on any stage of your career. Well, more than required, I would say they definitely can help you a lot. Even as a junior, just think about how useful it can be for you to know how to ask the right questions at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
how to ask for help, how to have these one-on-ones with your manager that we just talk about.
Right.
All of this requires soft skills. That's what we've been talking about, right? Making your work visible, growing, developing, having the right conversation, the right communication, the right sending the right message. All of this, it's soft skills. It's working with people. It's dealing with collaboration. So I believe that it can only help you speed up your growth, at least in the career space. The reason that I'm saying this is because I even seen a lot of developers growing faster, at least through the levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like moving to middle, moving to senior, because they just had bigger impact. Because they're able to collaborate easier with people, because like I said, they are more open to fail faster and to deal with problems and to help others to grow, like you were saying, with everyone has someone to teach someone else,
Mm-hmm.
by just not being afraid of jumping in, leading a conversation, taking more ownership. And that's always visible. People see that, right? And at the end of the day, as we much as we want to accept it or not, when it comes to who do we get promoted, who do we, it always comes back to the person that proves the best their work, right? It's
Yep.
more not than just does the one that does the work, to also the one that is able to make it visible. And through this type of impact and through these soft skills, you make that work visible. People see you, you're there, and you have impact way more than just on your task. So I think they're valuable at any stage of growth. Now, that being said, I do agree with you that when you're starting out as a software engineer, it's just about focus. So you might want and you might be focusing more on your technical skills
Sure.
because you need to get that traction, right? You need to, and you're also motivated in the beginning to see things moving. You want to learn, you want to, and so you might not just be at focus. You get better at what you focus on, right? So it's just a matter of being more involved in the technical side in the beginning. But the moment you want to grow, the moment even from a junior, from a middle, or people are always going to bring up that topic.
Hmm.
Your communication is like this, like you're okay, you're really good at writing code and solving problems, but people cannot work with you. Or like it always comes up in those kind of situation. And I can tell you that because everyone that I work that approaches me, it's just that they don't come to me, I want to have better soft skills. They come to me, I cannot grow, I'm stuck, I'm getting bad feedback, right? That's the problem that we're solving to developing the soft skills. So, and I think the more you grow in your career, the more it escalates because the better soft skills
Yes.
you have, the impact it's way more visible, right? This is not just you with your tech lead saying the wrong thing. This is you with a whole team of engineers with experience, maybe, having different type of conversations with clients, with you have a different type of exposure. And so that's even more visible how you deal with people, let's put it like that. So that's my take on it.
No, that's awesome. There's I'm gonna butcher this, and I wish that I had it like written down or something, but I don't know if it was on LinkedIn or somewhere, but someone had written what I thought was a very clever way of framing this, and they were essentially saying something along the lines of you might have like the best technical skills, right? You might have outstanding technical skills, but your soft skills are going to be like, again, I'm going to butcher it, but like they become the limiting factor. So if your soft skills are not outpacing your technical skills, that will be the limiting factor, regardless of how technical you are. So I think
Even
ultimately, oh, go ahead.
sorry, I wanted to say, even technically, at some point, you cannot grow anymore or to the level to
Right.
have the impact that you want because people, maybe you just, they don't want to work with you. There's going to stop you from getting the job, from getting the promotion, from working on that project that really want to work with because you cannot, right? So you're at some point, you even to reach the technical, to do the technical
Hmm.
side that you want, you're still gonna have to develop those skills because again, you're working with people, the users are people, the clients are people, your team, it's all about people. And even in now we are in the area of AI, and you're gonna say, okay, yeah, but we're just gonna write code, we're gonna tell AI to write code. I think soft skills are even more needed than ever. I was seeing the other day, I don't know if you see the Firebase Studio,
Yep.
the
I
new
haven't used
thing
it,
where,
but I saw it. Yes.
so what's interesting about it is that you basically, it's a tool that allows like non-coding people with non-tech experience to build the website. It does the
Cool. Okay.
deployment, it does everything for you. You just have to tell it what to do.
Sure.
I have a friend in marketing that tried it, and he was like, this is really hard. I have to think about a lot of things. And I really thought my communication skills were good, but talking to this thing was really hard. And so it's about, think about from the perspective of you as an engineer explaining, even if you're going to work with tool, you still with the tool, you're still going to have to be able to explain to people, to AI, whatever it is that you want and how you want it. And so it's I think it's only going to be more and more needed.
I I had a I'm not going to remember the specifics, but I had this really interesting like personal example of using chat gpt as like a coding buddy. We're going back and forth designing stuff, and I remember that I asked it to go build something. So I was like, hey, like go design it this way, gave it some gave it some specs, and I remember being like frustrated. Like it did a pretty good job, but I remember being frustrated. Like, why the heck did it do this? Right? Like, I'm like, that seems so silly. And then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, to be fair, I never gave it any detail about that particular part. So I was getting frustrated that it built something that did mostly what I expected, but I legitimately did not communicate specifics around this thing. It picked something. I did it. This will work. And it's not wrong, it would work. But because in my communication to it, I was not, it's funny, like you have to think about your audience. In this case, my audience is a robot. So, okay, I do need to have some more specifics around what I'm trying to do. But this kind of thing comes up with people, right? We have this all the time where it's like, hey, go design this, go build this, go do this feature. Someone's nodding, yep, okay, I can do that. But if there's no communication back and forth and alignment and kind of getting on the same page, you might have, you have someone go off and design and build something for a month and they come back and you're like, wait a second, what about this or what about that? Oh, we didn't talk about those things. It's like it's the exact same thing. It's like it comes back to communicating. So ironic.
Explicitly to your audience. Exactly. That's why I'm saying I think the problem just becomes bigger. So
Yeah.
that's where we are.
Yeah, and I really appreciated too the idea impact and communication, right? So just to go back to the junior versus like as you're growing in your career, so fully agree. And I love that you called out like even how to ask questions as a junior and getting the help you need. Like that soft skills super important. I think the part that I was hinting at that you really nailed down was like as you're becoming more senior and that greater impact is expected and required for you to grow, it's almost impossible to do if you're not getting other people on board and building with them. So I think that when you're more junior, because those opportunities come up less, it's not an expectation that you're doing like cross-functional stuff. Like you can kind of scope it down. Like it's almost like you can dodge it a little bit, but at some point, like it just becomes such a limiting factor that you cannot deliver such impact without getting other people, other teams and stuff involved to deliver bigger, better things. So yeah, that's super cool. Okay, I wanted to ask just to wrap things up. I know you mentioned book coming out at the end of the year. Do you have a title for it and everything picked yet, or is that still TBD?
Yes. It's already, the first chapters are already released on the O'Reilly platform. It's called
awesome.
Leveling Up as a Tech Lead.
Cool.
And it basically tackles this gap I think we have in the market on doing this transition from a very technical role, senior engineer, to your first leadership role, which is usually a tech lead, team lead. So all of the things that we talked about today about, okay, what should I focus on, starting with one-on-ones, the skills do you need to develop, what do you need to care about in order to start managing people, it's all there.
Awesome. And then, as you mentioned, the full version will be released hopefully by the end of this year.
Yes, it's coming out every month. There's a new chapter being released. It's already available, and the full version in also in raw format. It's gonna be there.
That's awesome.
It's totally fine. Don't worry.
So people can go onto the O'Reilly platform right now and they can start. Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know
the whole topic on 101 was just released. So
awesome. Okay, so people can go follow up on that. That's great. And I'll bother you afterwards for links and stuff like that. But with that said, I just wanted to ask too, if people want to reach out to you, read more about what you have going on, can you share with us like where people can find you? And like I said, I'll get links and stuff after. But
sure, LinkedIn. That's where I am all day long. So any questions you have, any comments, I'm there. I'm posting, I'm engaging, following up with your content and with so many people, on fellow creators. So I'm there. That's where you find me. And on LinkedIn, you'll find all the updates on the book, on the course, on whatever I'm doing. It's there.
Perfect. Okay, well, that's awesome. Oh, I wanted to say thanks again. I really appreciate your time. The insights you're sharing, I think it's super helpful. I think that this kind of stuff comes up all the time. Whether people have these questions, explicitly, or they're just like, I'm feeling kind of stuck and like, I don't know exactly how to progress. I think this comes up all the time. So this is super helpful.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversations and thank you so much for the invite, Nick.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.